Nurseand.com presents the audiobook series of The Mental Files by Nurse Anne, out on Amazon on paperback and Kindle, and read here on the audiobook version. Let's get started. We're going to start with Book 1 in the series of The Mental Files by Nurse Anne. Book 1 is Sheep Among Wolves. Book 2 is Dr. John Doe. Book 3 is A Tent Under the Bridge. Book 4 is the Trilogy Edition, and Book 5 is Defenders of the Weak, just released. And Book 6, you get all 4 books in one, and that is the Series Collection Edition. But we're going to go ahead and get started on Book 1, the audiobook intro from Nurse Anne that you can get on Amazon. Let's go ahead and get started. Right along with mobile crisis caseworker Lita and Officer Leon as they tried to convince the man peered on the edge of the bridge not to do the unthinkable and find out if they can rescue the naive young Julie, whose mind is being ravaged by frightening hallucinations. Why did she run away from the boarding home? Will the paranoid young lady with the unexpected test result trust her caseworker and nurses? Or will the confused little lamb listen to her so-called boyfriend? If only she knew the evil plan the dangerous street predator had in mind for her. And what about the lonely caseworker? Does she fall for the handsome officer in spite of the nagging red flags? Will she rely on her faith or go with her feelings? Join the frontline workers as they battle forces of darkness seen and unseen. Mental health and addiction struggles are waging an all-out war for countless minds and lives. As a Christian and compassionate advocate on the front lines of emergency and mental health, Nurse Anne presents this fictional drama series based on an inside look at the growing crisis. As a certified emergency and mental health registered nurse of 28 years and still going, she provides experienced insight into the interaction of the frontline workers who engage in the heat of the battle day and night. The shifts are 24/7. Buckle up for the compelling ride filled with suspense, action, romance, inspiration, faith, and danger. And of course, this is a work of fiction. Names, characters, incidents are all products of the author's imagination and used for fictional purposes. Any resemblance to actual events or persons are coincidental. In addition, no actual patients or co-worker stories or lives were used in any of the Mental Files books in the series. Chapter 1, The Little Lamb. The frightened young lady with the matted hair and the dirty feet didn't know what to do when she saw the flashing blue lights. What's going on? Are they coming to arrest me? I didn't do anything wrong, she thought to herself. You know you're a bad girl, cried the frightening voice in her head. It had been a month since Julie ran away from the last boarding home the social worker had set up for her. Alone on the street, she was like a sheep among wolves. Just trying to find food each day was a major task, and the sickness she started feeling every morning didn't help much. Thankfully, she thought, my boyfriend Carlos really cares. I think he loves me. Where was Carlos, she wondered. She had met the smooth-talking stranger near the bus stop a few weeks ago. He had taken the pretty girl out to eat a few times, always with strings attached. Julie didn't know any better. Between the constant voices battling her every thought for a moment of sanity and the growling hunger in her stomach, she had confused the predator for an angel. Julie was all alone. Her mom was nowhere to be found. Even if she could find her somehow, the thought of going back to that old house where she saw her mom passed out every day, was too much for the young mind to take in. The harrowing flashbacks sure didn't help in painful memories of her mom's party visitors who thought Julie was a toy for their pleasure. Well, at least I'm free now, she thought. I won't be bothered anymore. And she sure didn't like those medicines the doctor at the hospital had given her. They made her feel so funny, so she stopped taking them. That's when the frightening voices started to infect her mind every waking moment. It only made sense to Julie to get out of that boarding home. The voices told her that everyone there were demons. If she didn't get out of there, she would be their next victim. Not to mention the creepy guy at the boarding home that wouldn't stop sneaking into her room at night. So now, in the corner store parking lot with the blue flashing light shining in her face, she thought, it must be the demons coming back to get me. Julie ran and hid behind the dumpster, located in the back parking lot at the corner market. Officer Leon and Julie's caseworker Lita from the mobile crisis team had already seen the frightened young lady. They were dispatched to the scene after a call from the store cashier. He told the operator about a barefoot young lady who was talking crazy and begging for food. Approaching her slowly, they tried not to frighten her. Julie knew she was cornered. What did I do? She cried out. I didn't do anything. Why am I in trouble? Julie, we're just here to help you, replied her mental health caseworker as she tried to coax the confused young lady to the car for a ride to the emergency room. Who are you? How do you know my name? Why are you bothering me? Questioned the disheveled young lady. Julie, it's me, Lita, your caseworker, answered the mental health worker, who was so relieved to finally find the young lady. Don't you remember? You see me every week during your outpatient mental health appointment, but I haven't seen you in over a month, Julie. What happened in the boarding home? You ran away. I'm worried about you, Julie. I just want to help you. I don't know who you are, yelled the frightened girl, whose mind was being ravaged by the confusing hallucinations. How about if we go in the store and I'll buy you a sandwich and chips? Tried Officer Leon. Who is that man? Screamed the young lady. Julie, he's okay. He's just giving us a ride. Why don't you come into the store? I know how much you love those chocolate chip cookies, encouraged the compassionate caseworker. Feeling hungry and overwhelmed, the timid and confused girl with the dirty clothes slowly began to come out of her corner, tempted by the offer of food. As the girl made her way toward the officer's car, the caseworker went into the store to get her the promised meal. Walking into the store, Lita whispered a prayer, thanking God that they had finally found the lost little lamb. She knew Julie was no match for the ravenous wolves waiting to prey on her out on the street. Trying to be as gentle as possible, the officer knew he had to follow procedure and put the handcuffs on the homeless schizophrenic before she tried to run like all the times before. The girl, breaking down in tears, didn't make his job any easier, but he knew it was for her safety until they could get her to the emergency room. Trying to give her a break, he placed the cuffs on the front of her so at least she could eat her food during the ride. Back in the car, the caseworker offered the frightened girl a tissue and helped her unwrap her food. Between her frightened sobs, Julie gobbled down her food, something she hadn't had in a day or two. During her ordeal, she wondered where her supposed boyfriend she met at the bus stop was. Chapter 2, Emergency Room Drama. As the officer went to get a wheelchair after he parked at the entrance, the caseworker tried to convince Julie that everything was going to be all right. Secretly, Lita wondered if it really would be all right. Worried about how crowded the waiting room looked, Lita knew that she could only stay a little while with the childlike patient. Mobile Crisis Dispatch had already told her she was needed on the bridge for another client who was contemplating the unthinkable. Although she loved her job as a mental health caseworker, she just wished she had more time with her individual clients. Knowing that Julie would be overwhelmed by the crowded waiting room, she asked for a blanket to put over the young lady's hands before everyone saw the handcuffs. Unfortunately, it was too late. Bored, sick, and angry patients and visitors in the waiting room had already seen the strange young lady in cuffs. As all eyes turned toward Julie, she tried to hide her face with the blanket. Overwhelmed and paranoid, Julie cried out, "I didn't do anything! I didn't do anything!" As Officer Leon explained the story to the triage nurse, Julie's caseworker tried to stay close by the girl's side while she still had a few minutes with her. "Okay, we've got it from here," announced the experienced triage nurse as she wheeled the young lady into the quiet room to get her blood pressure. "Thanks a lot, Officer Leon. You can take off the handcuffs now," explained the triage nurse, Kylina. "Yeah, thanks a lot, Officer Leon. I've got it from here," offered the hospital security officer, Marcos. During the triage process, Julie yelled out, "I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. I can't wait." Grabbing a container to get a sample from the young lady, the nurse guided her patient to the restroom. "Please get a sample, Julie," asked the seasoned nurse, "and I'll be waiting right outside of the door." Feeling relieved to finally have a moment alone and the handcuffs off so she could get a sample, Julie complied with the request, faintly knowing in her confused mind that maybe this was her chance. Coming out of the bathroom, Julie pretended to sit back in the wheelchair as the nurse turned aside for a moment to grab the sample in the cup. Remembering enough from previous hospital visits, Julie thought, "Now is the time. I have to do something now." Taking her opportunity, Julie made a run for it. Kylina and Marcos chased her back through the crowded waiting room as everyone turned around to watch the show. As the staff grabbed her right before she made it out the door, the confused young girl started to kick, scream, and bite. "Leave me alone. I didn't do anything," screamed the patient. "Julie, we just want to help you," offered the nurse. "No, you're a demon. Get off me. Somebody help," yelled the cornered girl. Before she could reach up and try to punch and scratch her way out of the impending confinement, the staff already had her down. As the staff carried her to the ER psych room, the next thing she knew, Julie felt the pain of a needle going through her skin. "No," she cried, "I don't want that stuff. It's evil. Leave me alone. Leave me alone." But it was too late. The medicine had made its way into her malnourished body. It wasn't long before she started feeling that familiar, drowsy feeling. Giving into the much-needed sleep, she could hear the voices in her brain laughing at her and taunting her. Justin, the emergency room technician who was assigned to watch her, talked with Julie's nurse about the test results that were processed from the sample. "Well, at least her drug screen was negative," said Nurse Kylina, "but I wish I could say that for her pregnancy test." "What? No way," replied the shocked ER technician. Hours later, when a bed finally arrived on the 5th floor in the psychiatric unit, Kylina called report to Angela, who worked there. Hearing the news about her regular patient, Julie, Angela's heart dropped in sadness as she heard about the positive pregnancy test. "We'll send her up to her unit as soon as the officer is available," offered the nurse, who was also a friend of Angela. "Okay, thanks. I'll get her bed ready. I've been wondering if Julie was doing okay since we sent her to that boarding home a few months ago," answered the nurse. She hoped a night of sleep in a clean bed would do the homeless girl some good. Julie started to wake up as her dose of medicine began to wear off. She could hear Nurse Kylina talking about her to the transport officer. "Nurse Angela is expecting her on the 5th floor psych unit," reported the ER nurse. "But be careful when you transport her. Unfortunately, we found out she's going to have a baby." "You're lying!" screamed Julie as she overheard the report. "I don't have a baby! I'm not having a baby! You're lying! Stop lying! You're evil!" screamed the bewildered patient. Chapter 3 is Man on the Bridge. Join officer and the caseworker as they try to help the man not to do the unthinkable. Chapter 4 is the psych ward. How does Julie get settled? Chapter 5, Joshua at the ER. They bring the man in. Chapter 6, Leon and Lita's date. There's many more chapters to this series, The Mental Files by Nurse Anne. You can get it here, and you can also get the complete series on Amazon. See you for the next audiobook. Nurse Anne, The Mental Files.